We're going to begin.
All right. Good morning. The issue before you here is the state budget, and in particular the budget proposal put out by Governor Schwarzenegger on Friday, January 8th. I'm going to provide a relatively brief overview given time constraints, and hopefully have a little bit of time for questions at the end. From a kind of high-level perspective, the budget, the governor identified a $20 billion budget shortfall over the two-year period, including the current year and the budget year, actually a total of $19.9 billion. And many of these details are on that green sheet that was passed out, and you should be able to follow it on there. That budget problem was, again, a two-year problem, including both the 2009-10 year, $6.6 billion of the shortfalls associated with the current year, and the other $13.3 billion is associated with the 10-11 budget. And so that, if in the absence of corrective action, the governor's forecasting that we would end up $20 billion in deficit by the end of the next fiscal year. So to address this problem, to solve this problem, the governor's proposing $8.5 billion in budget cuts, primarily in health, welfare, and corrections. He's also proposing that California seek and obtain an additional $6.9 billion in federal aid, and he's associated with a number of claims that California's had in the past and hasn't been, in our opinion, fully funded for things such as incarcerating illegal immigrants. There are claims around health care and around education. And so his plan would be to seek those funds. In addition, there's another $4.5 billion worth of alternative funding sources and funding shifts. And this is a variety of different kinds of, borrowing from various accounts, generating some new revenues such as a new automated enforcement system to catch speeders, taxing people's property tax in order to help with fire protection. There's a range of proposals. And the last kind of macro feature of the budget that I'd emphasize is the governor acknowledges that seeking that and obtaining that additional $6.9 billion in federal aid is a questionable proposition, or at least there's some risk of not achieving that. And so as a result, he proposes a list of an additional $6.9 billion in what are termed triggered cuts and revenues that would take place should California failed to obtain those additional federal funds. Those cuts are more draconian in nature, as you might imagine, than the cuts described before. They include actions such as eliminating our CalWorks program, eliminating in-home supportive services, eliminating the Healthy Families program. In addition, it would trigger the extension of some temporary taxes, and there's some other features there. So that's a contingency plan the governor's got built in. The community colleges are not included on any of those trigger cuts, by the way, and that's a welcome feature there. The governor did declare a state of fiscal emergency when he announced this budget plan, which will kick in a 45-day process for the legislature to respond to that fiscal emergency. The governor would like the legislature to adopt roughly $8.9 billion worth of these solutions in that 45-day period, including some current year cuts. The community colleges don't have any items on that current year or on that emergency session package. So primarily the action in that special session will be around health and welfare and corrections, I believe. So in terms of, another kind of high-level observation on this budget, I think education's the clear winner if you compare it to the other sectors of the budget. Doesn't mean it's a fat budget. Doesn't mean it's a particularly a good budget. It's only good in the context of California's continuing fiscal dilemma. For the colleges, I'll step through the major features. It's relatively straightforward, not too difficult to explain. The most prominent feature is that the provision or the proposal to provide 2.2% enrollment growth to the colleges. The associated dollars are $126 million, and that would provide resources to maintain access for about 26,000 full-time equivalent students. And so that was acknowledgement of the tremendous enrollment demand the colleges are facing right now from a variety of sources. You know, high unemployment rate, students being shut out from UC and CSU, and just families struggling with a difficult economy. The next feature I'll note is there's a slight negative cost of living adjustment, negative 0.38%. That is the result of the economic indices that are used to calculate our cost of living adjustment because of the kind of some price drops that are happening in our economy. It's actually resulting in a slight negative COLA, which would result in a minus $23 million. In addition, the governor's budget proposal includes no increase in fees for students. So the credit fee would remain at the $26 per unit. The governor's budget acknowledges some further deterioration in property taxes in the budget year in 2010-11 and provides roughly $40 million in funds to backfill that reduction in local revenues. There are a few more of changes more along on the policy realm. If you look at categorical spending, the governor is generally proposing maintaining spending for the categorical programs at roughly the level they received in 2009-10 in the current year budget, with the exception of there's a handful of categorical programs that will receive that negative COLA, relatively small dollar amount. So the general landscape on categoricals is a steady state from 9-10 to 10-11, with a few exceptions, and this is where the governor's exerting his policy preferences. He would like to take $10 million from from EOP&S and from the part-time faculty compensation item in our budget, and shift so $10 million from each of those programs, and shift that combined $20 million to support career technical education. And so what that would do, the net effect of that would be CTE funding would go up from roughly $48 million, which was provided in 9-10, up to $68 million. So it would be an augmentation of that budget item. So again, that's the governor expressing his policy priority there. He's also proposing some additional flexibility for the colleges. Most notably, he's proposing shifting three additional categorical programs into the flexibility item that was added, that was part of the 2009-10 budget package. So he's proposing shifting the EOP&S, basic skills, which we discussed this morning, and in addition, a budget item called the Fund for Student Success. All those three budget items he's proposing providing districts with very, very broad flexibility about how to use those monies. And by the way, on the Fund for Student Success, you might be more familiar with the subcomponents of that program. That's how it reads in the budget bill, is the Fund for Student Success, but it really means Mesa, Puente, and Middle College High School, which I think are the names that those programs are better known by in our system. I think the two additional features I'd note would be that the governor's budget does acknowledge the potential need to institute some additional funding deferrals. It was a kind of a vague section in the governor's budget, but it indicated that they are anticipating that California will again wrestle with significant cash flow problems in 2010-11, and because of that may need to take additional steps to delay payments. No individual, and the colleges weren't called out in that, nor were any other sector of the budget, but as many of you are aware, we have roughly $1 billion worth of deferrals built into our budget, $700 million worth of funds that are pushed from one fiscal year to the next in order to kind of create some budget savings, at least on an accounting level. And then there's an additional $300 million that's pushed from kind of within a fiscal year, from earlier in the fiscal year to later. All those changes were done in order to assist the state in its cash flow position And I think you've heard from many districts that's creating additional strain. So that's a risk on the horizon. And the last feature of this budget proposal is the governor is proposing the elimination of new competitive Cal Grant awards. These awards provide roughly $1,500 to community college students and provide a very valuable source of support to handle some of the non-fee costs that our students face. And so this was definitely a disappointing feature of this budget package, and I'm sure one that will be subject to considerable advocacy. The governor made a similar proposal last year. So in closing, I underscore what I think many of you know, which is that the governor's proposal is simply a starting point in a budget conversation that the legislature and the governor will be having throughout the spring and hopefully wrapping it up on or about June. And so for that reason, it's important to keep in mind that this is it's a dynamic process, and it will be subject to much debate. But that said, I think that the priority the governor's put on education, and the fact that our budget is relatively, that it's free from additional cuts, I think is one of the most notable features. That there's that additional growth funding provided, provides us with a stronger starting point for those conversations. But the advocacy throughout the spring is going to be more important than ever in order to hold on to a budget that looks something like this. That's the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Vice President Hiddleston.
Just one quickly, Eric, and we discussed this a bit, and as usual, you've laid this out very, very nicely. The $500 million that the governor is proposing in terms of job training, workforce kinds of stuff, I understand that the bulk of that money goes through the employment training panel and other departments. But as this goes through the legislative process, I hope you would continue that. Also urge the chancellor to weigh in on those conversations, because I think certainly our system is ideally placed to carry through some of that job training with our existing students.
I have had, fortunately, a conversation with Vicki Bradshaw. She initiated it when I happened to be over in the Capitol last week, and indicated that she wanted to have conversations with me, and I'm sure also with Vice Chancellor Millan and also Vice Chancellor Skinner. So we will do what we can to be a beneficiary of those funds.
Okay. Member Baca?
I guess we all can agree that overall that the community colleges are looked upon by the governor favorably in relation to all the other areas, and I guess we could pick and choose on some of the specifics there, concerned with Cal grants and maybe the part-time compensation, but the rationale on EOPS, seemingly being singled out. Do you have some additional comments maybe that you could make about that?
Well, the administration really hasn't publicly explained these changes, and will do so throughout the budget process. My guess at this point is simply the governor was looking for a way to protect career technical education and to maximize resources for the CTE. It's a real priority for him, and I think that the administration feels that, especially in this down economy, it's vital that we protect those courses, as I think we do. The way he sought, and so he was looking for money amongst our categorical items, and
and I know I've mentioned this in the past, but a lot of these categorical programs came about through a process of deliberation, discussion, real policy formulation. And it just seems that, during this time, we particularly with EOPS and maybe we could pick a couple other programs, that there's a risk of them fading away and disappearing without any real discussion as to the impact on those students. And, I don't expect us to have any long discussion about that today, certainly, but, just wanted to make that comment and reiterate it.
right? I would just add that, I think that the concerns that you allude to will be very much front and center in the conversations with the legislature. Some of the EOPS and the part-time faculty programs both are ones that the legislature will give considerable thought and debate as to the policy merits, the issues that you raise. And I think it's fair to say that a major segment of the legislature will not be supportive of the EOPS change in particular.
We're going to hear from the public now.
Jonathan Lightman from FAC.
Good morning, President Malumed, Chancellor Scott, and members. I want to first thank Vice Chancellor Eric Skinner for keeping us so up to date in a very timely manner, and to let you know that we've resumed our weekly Thursday conference calls. Those of you who may be new to the board may not be aware that the Consultation Council about 2 years ago tasked a small group to figure out a way to allow anyone throughout the state with an interest in budget advocacy the opportunity to participate, and I was given that task to kind of figure that out. And so what that evolved into was a weekly Thursday call, and we take very limited breaks throughout the year. In December we take a couple of weeks off, but we've restarted. The FAC board hasn't met yet to discuss the budget, but I would like to say that one of the hallmarks of our effectiveness over the past couple of years is our ability to have a unified voice on the budget. And I think that Member Baca's comments about EOPS present some of the challenges for this year, because what the governor has done, unfortunately, has pit worthy programs against one another, and that does not lead to the success either of our budget efforts or of our advocacy efforts. And so what I would urge you to do is to support the augmentation to the SB 70, but to express to the governor very strongly that EOPS and the part-time compensation funds are not the places from which to pull that money. Incidentally, I was with the Community College Association for Occupational Education the day that the governor's budget was released, and their comment was that so many of our students also need basic skills education, and so many of our instructors are part-time instructors. So to create this nexus that we're going to pull from these funds in order to support that is just simply unfounded. Incidentally, it's also very timely, not only in the realm of the very compelling testimony you heard earlier on the Basic Skills Initiative, but just this morning there was a report released by the Alliance for Excellence in Education, which is a national organization devoted to advocacy of at-risk high school students, in which they document 7,000 high school dropouts per day across the country, 1.3 million annually. And they say that if we can cut that figure by half, that is the biggest job stimulus that we could create in this country. They not only cite job creation, but increased home ownership, greater investment income, and we've also had studies in the past which support greater health outcomes. So to the extent that EOPS then takes those students that were dropouts and says that we will support you in higher education facility, that this is the way that we actually do create jobs in this climate. I would also like to point out that FAC has begun the conversation with a couple of legislators relative to the maintenance factor, which was approved in the July budget. You may not be aware that while the budget was approved on an 89-11 roughly split of K-12 to community colleges only received 8% of the maintenance factor. Now that difference reflects $335 million in our base budget. And that's historically, it's a bit unprecedented that we were not granted a maintenance factor in the same proportion as the Budget Act. So we feel in a sense that we should argue for this money, this $335 million. The other part of that equation in that maintenance factor deal that was struck was that 50% of that 8% community colleges are receiving are specifically devoted to SB 70 career technical education projects. So to the extent that the governor's priority for career technical education are being advanced. They are being advanced by that maintenance factor, and so we may want to express that in our arguments. But I do think that we need to continue with our line of, just as the Chancellor indicated, basic skills, lower division transfer, and career technical education, but not at the expense of student services or of our faculty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Richard Hansen, California Community College Independence.
Good morning. I don't have much to add to what Jonathan just said, and also the good job done by Chancellor Skinner to outline the budgetary problems. We're in a mess, but the budget at least was merciful from our point of view. What I wanted to do is to say, though, that in the background of all of this, there's a lot of work being done at the college and district level. The administration, together with the unions and also the academic senate, are working hard on difficult choices there. The irony of all these cuts is that as we headed into this economic trouble, the colleges were under a lot of criticism for issues of student services. And where have they decided, the government decided to make these cuts or direct these cuts? Precisely to those student services. And we see that happening now with the EOPS taking a second hit. And then it is, as Jonathan pointed out, ironic that we're going to pit two of the more needy populations, part-time faculty, against some of the more needy student populations who are served by EOPS. And when it comes to basic skills, which is where I think we're out ahead of the curve on some of these critiques that we were hearing, EOPS provides an excellent model on how to get students in need of basic skills training through the process. So I wanted to just say that, at the local level, there's a lot of work being done. It's not easy. I think from the union perspective, getting this budget news was a bit of a relief. We were ready for, another round. I can just talk from my own personal local experience. We spent our fall quarter working desperately on a major overhaul of our health benefits program to try to save our district what turned out to be quite a bit of money. And we're still now, as we enter our winter quarter, heading into the more program-directed discussion around how to cope with these cuts to the categorical programs. Fortunately, there was enough money to at least get us this far without having to do too much. We're able to go slowly enough to make some good decisions, but they're going to be hard choices. So just wanted to give a little bit of a local perspective on what's happening.
Thank you.
Good luck in your advocacy on our behalf.
Thank you. And I think that's the end of our public comments. I was going to move along unless you feel strongly you'd like to ask your question. I'm flexible.
Yes. I wanted to know, apparently, I've seen several informal surveys going out to districts about impact of budgets so far. Just wondering, I've not seen the results of any of those. Do we anticipate having an idea of the number of staff positions that have been lost so far, sections that have been cut so far? Is there any sense of where we are with that?
Yes, and apologies you haven't received that yet. We're working on distilling those surveys. And there's one more that was recently completed by the student services officers, and so we'll incorporate that as well. Broad brushstrokes. We're seeing colleges are generally tapping into reserves to buy a little time in their planning. They're cutting course sections significantly, probably an average of about 10%, and obviously that means a significant reduction in adjunct faculty. And we'll work to try to quantify that both in terms of number of positions and hopefully also in terms of the types of course sections being reduced. Where it's our hope that the districts are heeding the advice and trying to prioritize the CTE, the transfer, and the basic skills. And so that will be forthcoming.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good question. Thank you. Next, we're going to have our report. Thank you, Chancellor Skinner, Vice Chancellor Skinner. 8.4 by Vice Chancellor Marlene Garcia on state and federal updates. Oh, yes, Member
Thank you.
Davis Lyman.
We've just had this discussion on basic skills, and I know in the past, our board has taken a very strong stand on basic skills, the importance of it, not only for our individual students, for our community, and for the well-being of our state. One of the programs that has demonstrated historically, and it has a great track record of supporting students through basic skills, is EOP&S. So, in our deliberations, I think it's going to be hard for us to say, yes, we are for basic skills and the success of our students in our programs, and at the same time, have some deliberation on EOP&S, because EOP&S has a research record, a track record of supporting our students through, to succeed in our college through basic skills, one of the areas. So I hope we think about that as we deliberate on about the budget.
And thank you for that transition, because I was thinking the same thought as we're talking with Vice Chancellor Garcia and how we're going to advocate. That might be one of our subjects. And just as a little tickler, at our next meeting is our legislative reception in March, so it might be something we want to really talk about. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and I know the hour is running late, so Valerie and I will be providing you the state and federal legislative update, and we will touch on advocacy and tell you where we are in the process of preparing for this upcoming year. But before we get into the presentation, I'd like to formally introduce Valerie Purnell. She has a whopping 1 week under her belt on this job, and in just a moment you'll be hearing her as she gives the federal report. Valerie will be overseeing the entire federal relations operation and will represent the system and all our constituencies in Washington, D.C. She'll basically be the person who will be telling us how to follow the money. So we're all going to be watching and listening carefully to what she has to say. She has extensive experience doing policy and advocacy work. Prior to her most recent work as a consultant and a public interest advocate, she was the Associate Director for the State Governmental Relations Division within the Office of the President based here in Sacramento. So she has extensive experience working with legislative offices and doing policy work. She also directed the advocacy program for Children Now and worked for Public Advocates, a public interest law firm, where she focused on health care access issues. She's a graduate of Hastings College of Law and received her undergraduate degree from Pitzer College of the Claremont Colleges. So we're delighted to have her join our team, and I'll let her, you want to say anything now, or do you want to wait for your presentation?
I'll just clarify that that office of the president was not Barack Obama. It was, at the time, Richard Atkinson. That was for University of California.
Okay. Well, let me give you a quick update on the state legislative activity. We're obviously at the very beginning of the second year of a 2-year legislative session. So legislators right now are considering legislation and preparing for introduction of new bills by February 21st. So there's a lot of discussion right now going on about ideas and issues that might be addressed this year. But what may be confusing to you is as you read the newspaper, you hear about committees taking action on various bills, including bills that directly affect higher education and community colleges. What that is, the bills that were introduced last year but were not approved by the legislature are 2-year bills. So those bills are eligible to be heard by the legislature and must meet deadlines to get out of their House of Origin by January 31st of this year. So committees are moving quickly to address these bills, and in fact there have been a couple of bills that have caught our attention and are worth monitoring. One of those bills is you probably read in the paper today, the the AB 656 by Assemblymember Tarico, the bill that would impose a 12.5% tax on oil and natural gas revenues. And these funds would be provided to the public higher education institutions. Percentages are 50% to CSU, 25% to UC, and 25% to the community colleges. That's actually an improvement from where it was before. We've not been terribly active on this bill, as it's very partisan at this point, and the bill did get out of committee on a straight Democratic vote. But I think it's reflective of what we're seeing is that there are a number of revenue increasing proposals that are being developed right now, and we're going to hear about some. And what's noteworthy is that at least 2 of them have identified higher education as the entity that should benefit from these resources should it be approved. So I think what that tells us is that there is a recognition that too many classes have been canceled because of funding cuts, that student fees have increased because of these cuts, and that this is an issue that has really hit home in the various communities. So that message is resonating, it's real, and it's one that we're going to have to continue explaining and talking about in a way that's factual and clear about the impact of these cuts on our students. So I think that a lot of the work that we've done with our constituent groups, with FAC, with the League, with the student associations, has really, the message has gotten out there, and we're going to continue to have to put that message out there. As for bills, let me just touch on what I see as a few trends. Not many bills have been introduced, probably only about 6 or 7 new bills this year, a few of which are worth noting. But at your next board meeting, we'll have a much more thorough analysis of what's out there and what really has implications for our work. We have seen transfer. That is a big issue. And I think a lot of that stems from the media coverage of the number of students that are getting redirected away from UC and CSU. We have received numerous phone calls from legislative offices over the past 2 months. And we do know that there's a lot of interest in trying to do something. But what's interesting is that we're also getting a lot of questions about how can we work with you to figure out how to address this issue, to make sure that students are taking longer to transfer than they need to ensure that the transition is seamless and that there's some predictability in what the transfer process holds for students. Those are the kinds of issues they're hearing from their constituents, and I think that we've been talking a great deal to Morgan and Linda and Barry and others about what the intersegmental task force is doing and whether or not we can draw some answers and potentially some proposals that may be of interest to the legislature this year. There is one transfer bill that will be introduced, and this is the transfer degree bill that we dealt with extensively last year. As I understand it, Senator Alex Padilla will be the author of that bill. He's a strong author, and he feels very strongly about improving transfer. The Campaign for College Opportunity will be the sponsor of that bill. I haven't seen the exact language. Last time I spoke with the organization, they were moving back and forth whether or not they want to start with a proposal that was last addressed in the Assembly, which we did support, and this was the proposal to recognize when a student has met their degree requirements, and if they are also eligible for transfer, that they get an AA degree designated for transfer. And this was heavily negotiated between the Academic Senate and our office and many others, but it failed in the legislature last year. So it's unclear whether or not they'll start at that point or whether they'll go back to their original proposal, and we're waiting to see that language. But I do think that it's an issue that we'll be weighing in on and monitoring carefully. The other area that is worth noting is the transparency and accountability. I expect we're going to see some bills in that area during lean times. People want to ensure that all the resources are being used appropriately, and Senator Yee has reintroduced a bill to require foundations to follow the California Public Records Act, to be subject to the California Public Records Act, and that bill has been reintroduced again this year, so it's something we'll be watching, and our foundation has been very interested in that bill and concerned about that bill. The Accelerated Learning College proposal, many of you have heard about this. It's been talked about. It's apparently been modified considerably. I have not seen the latest language, but they're still looking for an author, the proponents of this proposal. And I'm assuming that they'll find someone who will carry this bill, and then once we take a look at it, we'll have further information for you at your next meeting. I think we're going to see, as we do every year, a number of bills dealing with jobs and the economy and green technology, and certainly Vice Chancellor Mian has been actively involved in answering a lot of legislative requests. We've received a lot of legislative requests, but the challenge for state legislators is it's hard to come up with a jobs bill or a green technology bill when you have no resources. So the proposals will become dependent on what happens potentially with this governor's pot of funding, whether or not that can get cobbled in some fashion to address these issues that include community college training. And then, of course, the other big piece of this is whether or not we're able to leverage federal resources for that. So to the degree that we're able to get that information from the federal government, from Congress, and figure out how we can tie it with some of these initiatives, proven initiatives in California, I think we're going to sit in a strong position to help develop and negotiate what some of these opportunities may look like. But all of that's at this point fluid and unclear, and that's a big part of what we're going to be focusing on for the next several months. So with that, I think that is the end of my presentation on state legislation, and I'll take questions if you have any, and then we can move to federal update.
Just one quick question.
I'm sorry.
Board Member Larwood.
Thank you. I'd like for you to go back to the transfer bill. And the transfer degree. How realistic is that, and what do you mean by transfer degree?
The original proposal was that any student who's eligible for transfer should be able to get an AA degree, irrespective of where they're transferring to or what the requirements are. So what you would end up with, a transfer degree would basically be anything that the receiving institution requires. So if they're transferring to UC, and UC says this is a transfer requirement for this program, that's what their degree is. If they're transferring to University of Phoenix, Phoenix would determine what that transfer degree is. So our academic senate has said very clearly and strongly that our academic senate is the entity that should determine what degrees, maintain the integrity of the AA degree, and it shouldn't be dictated by what transfer requirements are developed by receiving institutions. So we negotiated, and the author of the bill agreed with us and said, as a fundamental basis of any degree, we must require that students meet the 18 units in the area of their major or an area of emphasis within their major. And that was a non-negotiable. And so the author ultimately agreed to include that as part of any degree, including the general ed requirements that are required at GETC or CSU general ed. So that would be the foundation of every single degree, irrespective of whether they transfer. And if they're eligible for transfer, their degree would say an AA in political science for transfer. And that's what we had agreed to.
Thank you for clarification.
Okay. Valerie, would you like to report?
Yes, thank you very much. The 2010 Federal Relations Report included in your packet contains an outline of our legislative priorities for the year ahead. And I will briefly summarize at least the highlights of those reports and then welcome your questions and comments. Again, with the caveat that since this is my 7th day and these documents were created prior to my arrival, I will happily get back to you if I am unable to answer your question. The likelihood of that is pretty high.
Well, you're saved also, because I'm going to give you 5 minutes maximum.
Oh, that's great. I won't need 5 minutes. Thank
Okay.
you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Congress reconvened today, and while we may have thought that the greatest competition for airtime on our issues would have been healthcare reform certainly is there, but we continue to face competition from all kinds of issues. The nation's policy on terrorism, how we will all get along or not, etc. And who knows what else may come. because that, as Americans and anyone these days in the global society, you got to pay attention to what else may come. So the attention of Washington will be captured, and our challenge then is to be heard within that context. I believe that the California Community Colleges has a wonderful opportunity. I am making it my responsibility to remember that it is an opportunity we cannot squander. We have an administration that has said that community colleges will be an important part of the infrastructure that is necessary to rebuild the country. We have a governor who clearly supports community colleges and strongly supports our chancellor, as was evidenced by the State of the State. So we have an opportunity to go to Washington on a good foot, with good footing. And you heard the chancellor mention yesterday that we will be going to Washington, a group of us. We'll have a couple of major priorities. In your packet, you will see that we will be advancing our legislative agenda. That will be the California Community Colleges 2010 Federal Legislative Agenda, and specifically 2 items for advocacy. One will be H.R. 3221, the Student Aid and Fiscal Responsibility Act. You'll sometimes hear that referred to as SAFRA. And of great importance as well, a federal earmark for veterans, and that's what Marlene referenced yesterday. In short, H.R. 3221 basically structures the way in which financial aid has been delivered such that students and campuses no longer go through a middle person, an intermediary, but rather that money is now going, people are applying to and getting aid directly from the federal government. There's cost savings that are anticipated from that conversion, and those cost savings are going to be used as incentives for a variety of other programs. For example, loan forgiveness for students called away to active military service, increases in the maximum Pell Grant. There are major grant programs that are supposed to come out of this funding as well. The American Graduation Initiative you've probably heard of, getting many more graduates in place. We will be able to compete for innovative programs proven to increase degree completion, online education courses, community college modernization and construction, and some green technology, several other pieces there. With regard to the federal veterans earmark, we are going to be making it clear to those in Washington that the California community colleges, not only are we the largest in the nation, the largest system, but we in California take the greatest number of veterans. So that is something that we want people to be well aware of. Those returning students, those returning veterans, we're anticipating a highly increased number of students to come to the community colleges. We are, as of this moment, not as well prepared to receive them as we might be. So this earmark would begin to chip away at some of that lack of preparedness. The earmark we're going for would be $3.5 million to set up a fund here at the Chancellor's office. It would be bid competitively, and campuses would be able to succeed in that bid if they're able to show that they have programs that are effective in areas such as comprehensive veterans educational services, how to support veterans in areas such as sensitivities training for faculty who would be dealing with people with post-traumatic stress syndrome, brain injury, a variety of things, or simply just re-entering the workforce and employment. So there are a broad range of programs that we might be able to have established through such a program. It is a beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. The last thing that I will say is just that there are many, many pots of money in the stimulus program that the community colleges might be able to take advantage of. So a large part of what I will be doing is searching for those various pots and seeing ways in which the community colleges may benefit. Some of that will take some creative thinking, but we have some time, to do that. Lots of other folks are going to be doing it, and so you can count on the fact that I'm going to be doing that as well. And I look forward to your help in doing that.
Well, thank you, Assistant Vice Chancellor Purnell. I'm going to not allow questions and comments. People can come up and talk to you at the end
Great.
individually. Thank you both. We're going to do our board reports towards the end of our meeting here, and I'm going to start with Member Baum, who has an airplane flight, and then I'll go to myself, and then we'll go around the table.
Just very briefly, I want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues on the board and other members of the community up here for their support in my reelection to the governing board of the Pasadena Area Community College District. I was reelected in November and had a sizable margin of support, but that's because I had a lot of friends like my colleagues here, and so thank you for your encouragement, your support, and some of you even wrote a check, so that's even more welcome. So I appreciate it and want to express that publicly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations. My report starts with I had the chance to visit 2 community colleges since our last meeting. One was Los Angeles City College, where Jamila Moore is now the president. And if you didn't know, the TV show Community is filmed there, so that's also very important information. I'm sure you're all watching it every week. And it gives them income. I also went to Long Beach City College and toured their Student Success Center, plus the college. So that's been nice. I've met with a few community college presidents other than that, and a few trustees. So I'm gathering up lots of information and thoughts and ideas. I just wanted to share, Scott and I and the Chancellor have talked about changing the agenda still a little bit more, and our plan is to do the awards on Tuesday mornings. So let this be known to everybody that we're going to switch that after today's meeting. And I've also talked, and we've decided that we're going to do our retreat before our next meeting. So if you can plan on being here Sunday starting at noon, we can talk about our board goals and objectives during the Sunday afternoon on February 28th. And by the end of that, we'll also choose our committees. So we'll have that done, and we'll make that an action item for Monday, March 1st. So that will all be done by the next meeting. And just to also let you know, Scott and I are heading over to the governor's office to meet with people this afternoon. So I'll have that to report on next also. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll pass.
Okay.
Just quickly, I'm planning to be back here with the CCCT Legislative Conference on the 25th, and I am going to Washington, and we'll be there flying on the 7th and 8th, 9th, and 10th. So if there's anything that I can do when you're there, when the rest of the gang is there, I'd be happy to do it.
Thank you.
I just have a couple things very quickly. I will be traveling to Washington with John Nixon, the president of Mount SAC, and meeting with legislators and so forth. I also will be meeting with Assistant Secretary Ray Jefferson, the Department of Labor, whose involvement is in veterans job training. So hope to maybe accomplish a few things there. And I know that Member McDonald is trying to work that out, to be able to travel there as well, and hopefully he'll be able to join us. The other thing that I want to bring up is yesterday's discussion with Southern California Edison and the partnership that exists there, which is very good. But I do want to single out a person at Rio Hondo College, Steve Katnick, who is a biology instructor, but he really is a champion for this area of green jobs and green jobs training. Very skilled, and I think that's very important for any college to have. You got to have a champion within the ranks in order to make these effective, because we can propose them, we can lay out the funding for them and provide some leadership, but it's always important to have someone who actually is working it day to day and making it happen. So I'll leave it with that.
Thank you. Member McDonald.
A couple key things here on my little report that is passed out to you, so I can be brief. A couple neat things. Number one, as you can see on the first page, there's a picture of Lieutenant Commander Howell, who's in charge of the Southern California Army, advisory and recruiting group, and as our fearless leader, Lance Azumi, put me on that board. Thank you very kindly for volunteering me for it. Thank you. But anyway, we did a nice little program over at Fullerton College in Orange. And so there's Ned Dauphiny, the chancellor over at North Orange County Community College District. So we did that. If you flip the page over, the second page, I was very blessed to have Vice Chancellor Mian to give me a call and said, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you go over to the Deployment Development Department and give a welcome, because they have a little program called Honor a Hero, Hire a Vet. And they had a program set up so that they brought vets in. They had a little job expo and had ribbon cutting ceremony. But it was nice to have the community colleges involved with the program, along with the U.S. vets and the Employment Development Department. And I really thank him for allowing me to do that. I curse him because I had to drive up at 8 o'clock in the morning up at the LAX on the freeway, but that's all right. I used one of the gentlemen from Rancho Santiago Community College District, and I got a chance to use the Diamond Lane. But it was nice. It was really packed. They had close to about 600-700 people that came through today, and what another nice resource for us to be involved with. Again, getting the exposure, and as I volunteered, anytime something like this comes up again, I'll be glad to be involved. And I'm quite sure they do these in Northern California too. So we might want to look out to be part of this, because that's something else, part of our advocacy, to get out and help promote what we really do, especially for career technical education, and especially with our veterans. Also, I had an opportunity to speak at the Western Regional Council on Black American Affairs, and I had an opportunity to be on the Equity and Diversity in the Face of New Budget Realities at the Community College League California on that panel. And on the last page, bringing it back home one more time, I guess I'm the Los Angeles Harbor College hero, because they took part of my commencement address and they put it in the class program. And then on page 14, they even put an ad for the veterans down there. So they're trying to make everything happy for me, and we are out there in the community trying to do what we do best. And that's the end of my report.
Great work.
Oh, one last thing. I was very, very blessed that one of the members from the CSEA, Ricardo Freeman, who's back there in the back, actually filmed the league presentation and stuck it on Facebook. So he's trying to increase my fan base in the California world. So thank you very kindly, sir, for putting it on Facebook.
Thank you.
Okay.
Member Davis Lyman.
Already I've reported on the accreditation task force, but besides that, I also attended CCLC with my colleagues, some of them sitting on the board, and also attended a very large local luncheon where Dr. Catherine Jeffrey was honored as the Educator of the Year, the president of Sacramento City College.
And Board Member Zumi, what are you doing with all your free time in the past 2 weeks?
My copious free time, thank you. I have two things. I was, in November, I was invited by Her Royal Highness, the Queen of Qatar, to attend the World Education Summit in Qatar in November, and was able to fly there and be with 1,000 of the world's top educators, represent the community colleges there. Former Chancellor of Germany, Gerhard Schroeder, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and others were represented there, and so was able to make the case for our community colleges on a worldwide stage. And that was a really terrific experience to be there for the whole week in Qatar with all those people from around the world. Wow. The second thing I did was to Al Gore's, if you remember the film An Inconvenient Truth, his director, Davis Guggenheim, who won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, has a new documentary film on education, actually. and I'm actually appearing in it, and that's going to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival on January 22nd.
Wowie zowie, you've done well with your
I'm
time.
trying to get a ticket.
Whoa.
I know people.
Can I get
Know people.
Can I get your
Board Member Haley?
I can't even begin to say it. I mean, well, how do you follow Lance?
I
mean,
know.
there is just no way. And then I went to a couple of meetings in Long Beach, and it was very nice. I could drive down there, no flying, no problem whatsoever. And we did a couple of foundation meetings, went to a couple of things the foundation did in the South Bay, and that's it.
Well, thank you. There's a balance. Thank you. We need local and worldwide. Board Member Price.
First of all, for the last 6 months, I've sat on the SSCCC board as a regional senator for Region 9. I'll be resigning from that board now that I'm sitting here. The Student Senate has set a date for their march to be March 22nd, 2010. It's looking like it's going to be well attended. They already have 100 buses from the one of the colleges, which would in turn be about 5,000 students. So it looks like it's going to be larger than last year. The Student Senate had its best attended General Assembly just a couple months ago in San Francisco. There were over 600 students in attendance. There was also a candlelight vigil held that had about between 500 and 1,000 students that attended that. They recently elected Amanda Swan as their new treasurer, and 2 new senators, Bradley Stotlier and Ryan Raffel, have joined the council. And in the interest of time, I think I'll stop there, and I'll continue to bring that information to this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Member Ramos.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I don't have a lot to report since I'm a very new member of this body, but in my own home region of San Luis Obispo County, I've been recently very warmly greeted by the president of Cuesta College and the president as well of the foundation at Cuesta College, Dr. Gil Stork and June Stevens, respectively. I've had the opportunity to meet today another important CEO in the region where I am residing, Dr. Jose Ortiz, who's in the audience here from Allen Hancock College in the Santa Maria area, the place of my birth. So I'm indebted in particular to spend some time with him going forward in the next couple of weeks to learn about the important work that he is moving forward there. I did, as I reported briefly yesterday, have a wonderful initial conversation with the chancellor over the holidays. Which I think has initiated a very good rapport and dialogue for us to build on. And finally, I just want to say, as a first-time participant in these deliberations, I've been so pleased and so impressed with the quality of the conversation, the leadership, the talent, and the commitment involved on the part of all of the stakeholders here, not including only the board, but certainly many members of the interested public and respective agencies that we collaborate with. So suffice to say, I'm looking forward to bigger and better things going forward, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Member Thomas.
Thank you, Madam President. I regret to say that I had no royal invitations. I guess it got lost in the holiday mail or something. I'm not sure what it was.
We have one king.
No royal invitations. I did have the opportunity in November to join a representative from Congressman Wally Herger's staff, and I attended a Weld Olympics competition at Yuba College. The event was sponsored by Lincoln Electric Company, and I understand that they don't sponsor a great deal through community colleges, so that was really exciting to see students participating in that. I joined other colleagues and attended the league conference in Burlingame and found the sessions to be very interesting, and really wanted to thank the league for their hospitality and their hard work in bringing all of us together. And the other thing, in December, I received notification that I was selected to serve on the league's Commission on the Future. And that commission, as I understand it, is charged with developing a report on the 2020 Vision for Student Success. So I'm looking forward to participating with that group to see what kinds of things we will be coming up with. There's, I believe, about a 33-member commission that will be working on that. And as I understand, the commission will also work to provide model grant applications for colleges to use when submitting for funds under President Obama's American Graduation Initiative. So I will report on that as it progresses.
Well, thank you for being a part of that group. I've heard about it already. We have 2 more orders of business, so don't run away yet. The first one is public comment.
Jonathan Lightman from FAC, followed by Reed Milburn.
Thank you, President Malumet. I'll go very quickly, owing to the interest of time. Just want to alert you to a couple of events that we will be sponsoring. There will be a policy forum on Friday, January 29th, that FAC is sponsoring in conjunction with the local union at San Diego City College. It's AFT 1931. And we're going to be featuring as well as honoring Assembly Member Lori Saldana, who serves as the Speaker Pro Tem. This is her last year in the legislature, and those of you who are not aware, she was a faculty member at San Diego City College for her career. On February 28th to March 1st, and I know that you just announced a meeting that day, that is our Advocacy and Policy Conference. We will be featuring Controller John Chung as our lunch speaker. Perhaps if you're finished with your meeting, you might be able to join us at 5 o'clock. We have our annual Jeopardy tournament. The Chancellor could fill you in.
Does the conference start in the morning on that day?
We will be having a pre-conference starting around 10:15, and the formal event starts with a lunch presentation. And we will be focusing on faculty and students advocating together. That really is the theme. And just as a little digression, FAC and the Student Center for California Community Colleges have entered into a formal relationship to develop grassroots partnering for community college advocacy. We don't have this confirmed yet, so I don't have any details, but we are attempting to do a breakfast for a legislative leader on March 1st, and when we have those details, we can certainly report them. And then the final event is not ours, but the California Community Colleges Association for Occupational Education asked me to alert you to its conference, which is scheduled in San Francisco on March 17th through the 19th, and I believe that they will be co-sponsoring that with the CIOs. But with all of this discussion about career technical education, SB 70, economic workforce development, that may be an event that you'd like to attend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reed Milburn from the Student Senate.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, Chancellor Scott. Happy New Year to all of you. I'm really excited. I wanted to first congratulate your new members and especially our new student member, former Senator Price. She is a very dedicated and committed student, and we're really thrilled. I don't think a better student could join your team. So welcome and thank you to all of you guys. I also wanted to encourage you to participate with us on the 22nd for the March in March. We're really excited about that. It looks like the turnout already will beat the numbers from last year, as Board Member Price said. And finally, our General Assembly in November was highly successful, and with the board's permission, I would like to turn over to Njeri our resolution packet for your review.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then we're on to new business. Vice President Himmelstein has something.
Yes, just real quickly. Recently, in talking with Executive Vice Chancellor Bruckner, and I had been thinking about this. Our system has, or this office has the ability now to print ID cards. And having been the governor's office and all of the other boards, such as the State Board of Education and CSU, the board members do possess ID cards identifying them as board members. And I say that because it is with the security concerns, sometimes it is helpful as we're tooling around the Capitol and other places to have some form of ID. So I would request, with the President and the Chancellor's concurrence, that our board be issued ID cards. Also, I don't know that I would want it, but we also could also, for board business, have a community college email account, which is standard procedure at some of the other boards. So I certainly would make that request.
I think that's a very good request. And I will talk to Executive Vice Chancellor Steve Bruckman about that, and we'll get back to you all. Thank you. Any other new business? Member
I'd
Davis
just like
Lyman?
to ask, maybe I missed it, but I thought today we were getting from the foundation the
That's a very
OSHER,
good
the
point.
update on the.
I
college
saw Paul
OSHER.
Lanning step in, but it looks like he's stepped out.
I wonder if that could be mailed on our Friday packet.
Okay.
That information would be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Thank you for remembering. Any other new business? Well, thank you very much. We'll probably see you at our retreat on February 28th.